This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Assistant Fire Management Officer for the Kansas Forest Service, Eric Ward, kicks off today's show with reminders for people during the winter and holiday season. He shares concern for Christmas trees, candles, fireplaces, and smoke detectors. K-State crops judging team members Lakin Giager, Kane, and Carissa Sohm continue the show as they talk about being crops judging national champions. Ending today's show is K-State Research and Extension Horticulture Agent for Riley County, Gregg Eyestone, as he discusses how to properly store gas lawn mowers and garden tools until they are needed again in the spring. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Thursday show talking about things that people might want to keep in mind when it comes to fire safety reminders this time of year. And then to talk about it, we're joined by Kansas Forest Service Assistant Fire Management Officer Eric Ward. Eric, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Eric, talking through a few different things that you may have seen as you were a fire chief, and the first one, important for people to think about, real trees and their ability to catch on fire.
Sure. We love real Christmas trees. They smell good. They're beautiful. If they're properly maintained, they can be very safe. But if you allow your tree to dry out, or if you buy one that's been sitting on a tree lot for potentially weeks before it gets sold, they can be a real fire hazard. So we really encourage anybody that wants to use a real tree to use one that's fairly freshly cut, and definitely keep it very well watered. If it starts to dry out, an evergreen tree can be a serious fire hazard.
Also, while we're thinking about the holiday season, wanting to think about lights and making sure that they're well connected and nothing's fraying apart?
Yeah, making sure you use a good set of lights that's got a tag on it that says it's approved by Underwriter Laboratories, UL. That's a safe thing to check on any kind of electrical device. And make sure they're in good shape and that they're not getting super hot. Definitely don't use real candles on a tree.
And when we're thinking about candles, what are some safety things that people should really keep in mind so hopefully they don't light everything on fire?
Well, candles are kind of the same thing. They can be really beautiful. They can smell good. They can really provide some ambiance. But never burn a candle when you're not with it. It's very easy to light a candle and then get sidetracked and you get busy with something else and forget it's lit. And it can burn down. It can get knocked over by a pet. It can, various things happen to where it can create a problem. So if you're not going to be right in the room with it, blow it out.
Are there some safe and unsafe places to put a candle?
I wouldn't put it underneath anything. So you don't want anything directly above it that could get heated up by it, or, right next to something flammable. Don't put it right next to a dried plant on the dining room table or something. You've got your bouquet next to the candle or something where it could heat it up.
And Eric, when we're thinking about lighting things on fire, also important to mention fireplaces and things that people need to do around those.
Fireplaces are easy to forget about. Again, this time of year, it's lovely to have a fire crackling in the fireplace in the evening. Fireplaces, if they're properly installed and maintained, can be very safe. One of the most common mistakes people make is not cleaning out their chimney regularly. Hire a professional chimney sweep to come sweep it periodically, inspect it, make sure if it's a stone or brick fireplace, that there's no cracks in it. I worked a fire years ago where a beautifully prepared stone fireplace in the attic, the stonework was really shoddy, and there was actually gaps that allowed embers to drift out of the chimney into the attic and start the attic on fire. The other big problem is if the chimney's not cleaned periodically, or, one example we had was somebody who was trying to be cautious by never burning their fireplace real hot, and by not having that heat to carry the smoke up and out of the chimney, it allowed that smoke to cool as it rose, and it starts to coat the walls of the chimney, and it just completely packed that chimney full of creosote, which is the material that coats the chimneys. And that can be highly flammable. So a frequent cleaning and inspection by a professional is your safest way to avoid that. And then don't burn low, smoldering, smoky fires. Make sure you get some real heat going to carry that smoke out of your chimney.
Is there ever any concern with wood popping outside of the chimney or the fireplace?
Yeah, if you don't have a screen or glass doors on the fireplace, there's very definitely the potential for stuff to pop. Wood that's got a lot of moisture in it. Some woods, pop and spark more than others do. And if one of those embers comes out and lands on something flammable, it's good to have a non-flammable surface in front of your fireplace, a hearth or a fire-resistant fireplace rug or something that if something does pop out, it's not a big problem.
Eric, what are some safety reminders then when it comes to taking the ash out of the fireplace?
It's pretty common to scoop the ashes out and dispose of them. I've been to several fires where people scoop the ashes out, put them in a bucket, and sat them in their garage or with the trash or something like that. They didn't realize there was still something smoldering in there. Or even dumping it in the garden or the flower bed if you don't know for sure it's 100% out. So I recommend putting it in a metal bucket that's not ignitable, and then put it in a location that will, if it did get hot, wouldn't cause a problem. Put it on the driveway or put it out in the dirt in the garden or someplace, and just let it sit for a couple days. Or alternately, if you're in a hurry, fill it with water. Scoop your ashes into it, fill it with water, and then dump that out on the compost pile or the garden or wherever you're going to dump it.
And a topic of conversation we had last year also, but a great reminder when it comes to space heaters.
Space heaters, again, very, very common. A lot of people are a little bit cold-blooded, or, they work in an office that the temperature isn't quite to their liking or whatever, and they're a good way to heat up a chilly room. Again, always start with one that's in good condition, that's fairly, not ancient. Make sure it's listed, got a sticker on it that says it was approved by Underwriter Laboratories, indicates it's been tested for being a safe design. And then keep in mind that a space heater can get hot enough to ignite stuff. So it shouldn't be near anything flammable. It's very common for people to stick a space heater under their desk, and technically they're not supposed to be within 3 feet of anything, which eliminates putting them under a desk. Also, again, never leave them unattended. Turn them off when you leave the room. If you're not there, you don't need it. I've been on several fires with barns and dog houses and so forth where people put some sort of a heater in to keep their pets or their livestock warm, and the animals don't know not to knock the heater over. So they may, knock some bedding against it, or some feed gets against it, or it gets knocked over or whatever. And then that ignites stuff, and that generally does not have a positive outcome for the animals you're trying to keep comfortable.
What does it need to be plugged into?
It should be plugged directly into the wall. A heater should never be plugged into a power strip or an extension cord. Those devices are not designed to withstand the current draw that most heaters pull, so it should always be plugged into directly into the wall.
And when we're thinking about Christmas, the holiday season, oftentimes a lot of cooking happens too. And just a reminder that there's also fire safety concerns when it comes to that as well.
That's another one. It's very easy, especially when you're in the hustle and bustle of trying to get ready. You got family coming over. You're trying to get the table ready. You're trying to cook that special dish. You put something on a stove to cook. The doorbell rings because something's being delivered. So you go to the door. While you're there, the phone rings, so you answer the phone, and next thing you know, your smoke detector's going off because hopefully you have smoke detectors. And you realize, oh my gosh, I left, that special dish on the stove and now it's smoking. It's just so easy to get distracted. And so if you're cooking, stay with it. Don't walk away. One thing I've started doing, I don't rely on the timer on my stove when I'm cooking something. I always use my phone as a timer, and that way if something does happen and I do walk out of the room, I still have a timer telling me it's time to go turn that off. And that has probably saved more than one meal for me.
Eric, you mentioned smoke detectors, so what's the maintenance that this might be a great time of year to take care of?
Smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors should be in every home. Depending on what kind you have, if you're in a fairly new construction home, you probably have hardwired smoke detectors that are built in. They're part of the home's electrical system. If you have an older home where you've added smoke detectors, you need to check them and see how old they are. They're only designed to work for about 10 years. And you can buy them now that have a 10-year battery, so you don't have to replace the battery every 6 months. Older ones that are the ones that use 9-volt batteries, you need to replace that battery every 6 months. And a lot of times we use the time change from standard time to daylight savings time as a time to check it and change your batteries, but at least put it on a regular schedule. Or buy the ones with a 10-year battery. That's what I've done in my home, and I actually take a label maker and put right on it, right on the front of the detector, replace on December of 10 years from now. And that way I don't have to try to remember how old it is. I don't have to pull it off the wall to see the label on the back to see how old it is. I just know that, in fact, just a couple months ago, I saw that I had a couple that were due for replacement. And so I ordered replacements and put the new ones up with a label on it. They should also be tested periodically. Go through and just push the button and see if it squeals obnoxious. And if it doesn't, then something's wrong and you need to get a new one.
What is some other fire safety equipment someone should maybe have in their house?
Definitely recommend a fire extinguisher or more than one fire extinguisher. Get one that's rated as an ABC, which means it'll work on any kind of stuff that would be burning in your house. A lot of them are just rated as BC, which means they'll work on burning liquids like a grease fire on your stove or electrical. The C, think of the word circuit for electricity. But they don't necessarily work well on trash or furniture or that kind of thing. ABC will work on all common household types of stuff. I would say get the biggest one that you can comfortably carry. You would never be disappointed by having more fire extinguisher than you need. It is very disappointing to run out of fire extinguisher material before you run out of fire. So get the biggest one you can comfortably handle, and also always make sure it's in a position you can get to it. It's tempting to put the fire extinguisher on the wall behind the stove. Well, if there's a stove fire there, you're not going to get to that comfortably. Put it where it's on the way out the door. So if you get to your fire extinguisher and the fire is getting really big really fast, you just keep going out the door. Don't stop. If there's any question, get out. If you use the fire extinguisher and the fire is not out, get out. If you're using the fire extinguisher, get everybody else in the house out. Again, you'll never be wrong by getting out and then finding out you didn't need to. If there is a fire, once you're out, never go back in. There is nothing in your house other than your family that is worth going back in for. And a sad number of people in fires that have died have already made it out once, and they've gone back in for something. And even going back in for other people, if they haven't been able to get out because of the conditions, chances are very, very good that without protective fire gear like a firefighter would wear, that you can't get out, get to them, and get them out without also being overcome. And again, a lot of times people have died going in after somebody who's already made it out the other door. So gather everybody out in front where the fire trucks are coming, make sure everybody's there, and then if they're not, tell the fire department where they were.
Eric, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Glad to do it.
That was Kansas Forest Service Assistant Fire Management Officer Eric Ward. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show talking with members from the crops judging team who were named national champions. And today we're joined by Lakin Giager, Molly Kane, and Carissa Sohm, who are all agronomy majors here at K-State. Lakin, Molly, Carissa, I appreciate you all taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lakin, as we talk about you guys being national champions, what prep work goes into getting prepared for competitions?
Yeah, so it's definitely a lot of independent work. We have team practices, but the contest itself is very individual. And so that requires a lot of individual practice. And so we have practice sets every week. And we just kind of go in on our own time, and we'll kind of rearrange our schedules to find a time that we could do a grain set, we could see analysis set, and an ID set. I think for the most part, it's probably around 5 hours a week, I'd say, of just individual practice, along with 2 hours a week of team practice. So,
and when you say practice sets and individual practice, what does that incorporate?
So our practice sets are just old contest sets. So, and it's kind of hard to explain without explaining to you what grain grade and seed analysis is. But in grain, we have a set of 8 samples. And basically we pick through them, and we have a manual that tells us a list of guidelines to follow. And we'll just go through and give those samples a grade. And we have an hour and a half to do 8 samples, which is exactly like in a contest. And then with seed analysis, we have 10 samples of those, and we're giving a crop seed that has other seed mixed in it. It could be other crops, or it can be weed seeds. And we have to pick through those samples and find the foreign seeds and put them in their respective categories. So if it's a crop, if it is a restricted noxious weed, if it is a common weed, or a prohibited noxious weed. And we get an hour and a half to do 10 of those samples. And then our ID sets, we have 200 samples, and then we get an hour and a half to just walk through all those samples, both seeds and plants, and just identify them correctly.
Molly, what were some of the other competitions that took place this year?
We also hosted the regional crops competition at K-State during September, and we hosted Oklahoma State University and Iowa State University, including all the same parts of the contest as the national. It went well for K-State. We took first and did very well.
Carissa, as you guys all got ready for the national championships, what were the feelings?
So for preparing for our national contests, we just did a lot of extra practice, but there are also some parts of the contest that you can study without picking through samples. So like Lakin mentioned, we have to classify all of the different weed seeds, so memorizing which weeds go into which category. There are also special rules for seed analysis, certain seeds that you can never mix together. So if you know those going into it, then you're a bit more confident in making decisions in the contest. And just becoming more familiar with the grain grading tables for all of the different crops that we do.
You've mentioned Kansas City and Chicago, and why do both of those locations go into the national championship?
So the contests are traditionally hosted in Kansas City and Chicago because those are the two national sites for historical grain trading. In our Chicago competition, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange hosts the Chicago contest, and in Kansas City, we have the American Royal hosting the contest there. But those are both locations where grain trade was of historic monument.
And is the competition similar in both locations?
It's the exact same.
The content is the same.
The components are the same, but we get different samples to work through.
So what were the feelings from each of you going into this competition?
I think it was definitely a little bit high pressure just because K-State kind of has a legacy with crops judging. We've done very well in the past, and so I think we're kind of expected to carry that on, and so we all just really wanted to do well and represent our school well. So it was a little bit of pressure, but I think we all just wanted to enjoy it for the most part, too.
This was my second year back, so I competed last year, and I did very well. I was happy with how I scored, but I was able to compete as an alternate. So coming back for the second year, I was excited to see what I would be able to do.
This was my first year ever doing anything related to grain grading. I didn't do it in high school or last year, so I was very new to the contest, and so I was kind of nervous because I had never been in a contest situation before regionals at least. But I just wanted to help my team out the best I could and be a valuable part of our scored team.
To win the national championship, do you have to win both Kansas City and Chicago?
Yes.
Otherwise, you kind of share it with the school that wins the other one. But to be the true national champion, you have to win both.
In Kansas City, Lakin, you were first, and in Chicago, Carissa, you were first, and Molly also placing very high in second and third in those locations. What was it like going from finishing that competition to getting announced as winners?
It was very exciting to see how everyone placed. We were all anticipating it. Of course, we didn't know how we did. None of us knew, so it was really exciting to find out how we all placed.
I think we all expected, all of our scores have been pretty similar depending, we all have our strengths and the components of the contest, but kind of not knowing until they're announcing the names and you're waiting for when they're going to call you and how we all place within the top however many places, because we all expected to place pretty close together and in the top portion of the contest, but seeing how it pans out individually was kind of stressful.
And we were all within 10 points in Chicago, so it was very close placing.
Who were other teammates, coaches, supporters who helped make this possible?
So Dr. Rachel Cott was our head coach. She facilitated all our team practices. And then also Sarah Fry also helped us out a lot. She's great. She's done crops team in the past, and she's very knowledgeable on it. And so we trust her a lot. Then also Dr. Kevin Donnelly. We get a lot of help from him. He's retired. He's still very much around. He helps run other crops contests too, and you can tell he loves it so much. He's also so knowledgeable on these topics, and we love to have him around and kind of learn from his knowledge. Also, our assistant coach Quentin Bina, he competed last year. I think he's a junior in college. I'm sorry, I can't talk about Quentin without laughing, but he's more so our friend that competed in the past. He did very well last year at both national contests. And so he's our assistant coach. He puts together our samples and changes them out every week. And we learn a lot from him. We ask him a lot of questions. We also argue with him a lot on things we don't agree with. And it's very fun. He encourages us, gives us constructive
He's there for moral support.
Yeah. When pressures are high, he lets us vent to him also. And it's been great having him around.
Who are some of the other teammates on this crop judging team?
So for nationals, we brought a team of 6. And so the 3 of us were on the scored team, and our alternate team was Carly Albright, who is in agricultural education, Ella Pakta, who is also an ag ed, and then Faith Winkleman, who is in agronomy as well. And as an alternate team, they did so well. It was crazy. Like, the whole team was very strong as a whole. So figuring out how alternates place and like who's going to be on the score team and who's not really came down to a matter of who had competed before or who didn't have a chance to compete again, because we had such strong alternates.
We also had Benton Kerr and Peyton Merrick at our regional competition.
How does you guys' effort and work towards crop judging, being on the crop judging team and being national champions, play into potentially what you might do in the future?
I think that more so not just looking at the fact that it's a crops judging team, but that it's a judging team in general, and the relationship building, the career development, and the, hard work and dedication and all of those things that we did for this has set us up to a lifelong success for whichever career we may go into. So just the effort of us going out for crops judging and all of the work we put in, that right itself right there is setting us up for success.
And there is plenty of networking at the different contests with like other teams, and we have tours that all of the competitors go on prior to the contests. But within agronomy specifically, there is a lot of room for like transferring these skills, especially for plant and seed ID with crop consulting. And there are specific careers that incorporate seed analysis and seed quality, as well as grain grading. I feel like those aren't quite as common, but the skills are transferable depending on which career you pursue within agronomy.
Kind of what Carissa said, you learn a lot of things, especially as being agronomy majors. We learn a lot of things within this contest that can very much be applied to our future careers that we may not learn in class. So like plant CID, like we'll see a lot in the future, and then topics related to like grain quality and just stuff like that we may not learn in our courses that we take.
Lakin, Molly, Carissa, I appreciate you all taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
That was Lakin Giager, Molly Kane, and Carissa Sohm, who are all agronomy majors here at Kansas State University, and were also a part of K-State's crops judging team, who were national champions this year. If you'd like to find out more information about K-State's crops judging team, you can do so by going to agronomy.k-state.edu. Again, that is agronomy.k-state.edu. I will link it in today's show notes on agtoday.net. There will also be a link to the crops judging team's social media if you'd like to follow along with how they're doing. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be right back.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. Winter officially begins December 21st. In preparation for the transition from fall to winter, many home gardeners will soon be storing all of their lawn and garden equipment until spring. K-State Research and Extension Horticulture Agent for Riley County, Gregg Eyestone, explains how to properly store lawn mowers and garden tools. Greg, I know people are still battling some of the leaves that are continuing to fall around the area, but we're kind of reaching that point of the year where it's time to start thinking about putting the tools away, and before we do that, there's a lot of maintenance that has to occur.
There can be. Definitely it's nice, too, in the springtime when you're kind of hurried and rushed that you have your tools ready to go, whether you need to maybe put one on your Christmas wish list, get something new that will help you out, or just maintain the tools that you do have.
We're not seeing a lot of lawn mowing right now. I think the grass has pretty much gone dormant. What are some things we need to think about in terms of storing the mower for the winter?
Yeah, so one of the big ones, at least for me, is the fuel, so that it will start come springtime when it's needed. So there's two different ways you can handle that. I like to try and use all my fuel up in my equipment so that there is no storage of it. If you don't get to that point, you can top it off, if you will. One of my Riley County Extension Master gardeners had a small engine business, and that was kind of his recommendation that, you only have it in dormancy for 3 or 4 months. And so if you top it off, there's no room for water to condensate and cause your engine issues, if you will. There are also additives that you can add to your fuel tank that will help prevent it from making it not usable and harder to start and get it going that way. So yeah, there is if you have a machine of some type that uses a fuel, probably need to take some preparation to make sure it's going to be working next springtime when you need it.
I know we also often forget about the underside of the mower and the blade itself.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to have a better results if we have a sharp blade. So we need to do that periodically, depending on how often you need to mow. Kind of a rule of thumb is every 10 hours we want to sharpen that blade. Of course, I might hit a stick or a rock or something in between times, which would be a good time to sharpen as well. You can do that yourself, get the blade off of there, use a grinder, or they make tools especially for sharpening lawnmower blades. Of course, this is a season of giving and things like that. You could take it to the repair person, or maybe somebody you know would be willing to flip the bill for that, but get your blade sharpened. You can clean underneath your deck while you're there. That's just going to be a nice thing to do, whether you can do that or maybe, again, hint, hint, have somebody do that for you as a Christmas gift.
What about some of the small tools, maybe some of the hand tools that we use?
Yeah, so we want to make sure they're sharp as far as if you have some type of a hoe operation, your shovel. Those are tools that we can sharpen up with a file if you want, a couple strokes with that. Typically, we just do it on the back side and then several 10, 12, 15 strokes. You can, depending on your material, maybe put a coating of some type of oil over that to kind of protect it from moisture, if you will. And so those are things we can do. We do have a publication on how to sharpen tools. So if you go to the K-State website, do a search, you should come up with how to maintain your hand tools during the off-season.
Is there anything that we should be doing in the yard as well?
Of course, tree leaves still blow around. Maybe they're coming in from other locations. Keep those off your turf as far as your cool season grass so it can still do a little bit of photosynthesis. So keep those down if you can. I still have my strawberries to cover, so we're getting between Thanksgiving and Christmas time. We try to cover our strawberries with some mulch to protect it. It's actually not to keep them from getting too cold. It's to keep them from staying dormant, so that come springtime they're ready to go and haven't started blooming too early. Also, the shallow-rooted plants like strawberries, they can heat themselves if we get a lot of freeze-thaw cycles and kind of push themselves out of the soil where they desiccate. And so mulching some of these plants will keep them dormant and healthier through the season.
And I guess we want to make sure that hose is unhooked.
Yeah, definitely. Those can cause some problems. So drain your hoses, keep them indoors, get them out of the UV light would be great. Drain them is a great way to handle that.
That's K-State Research and Extension Horticulture Agent for Riley County, Gregg Eyestone, with information for properly storing garden equipment. The Extension publication, How to Clean and Sharpen Garden Tools, is available through the KSRE bookstore. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.